Hey, Danielle. Welcome to the next level conversation. How are you?
Hi, I'm really good.
So, before we get started, I just wanted to do a quick intro on you and tell the people that may be listening a little bit about you. You are a mother of two, wife, a homemaker. You have a law degree, and all the while you've been living your life and building a beautiful family. You've been dealing with a crisis over the last 14, 15 years. And through that time, you've learned a lot and battled, and it's also become not just a battle, but also a spiritual and emotional transformative journey for you. And, we were talking about it a little while ago, and it was really interesting. And I thought it would be great to have you on the show to share a little bit of that and for me to ask you some questions and maybe, well, I don't think maybe, but definitely from what you've learned, I think a lot of people can garner a lot of great information and some education. But about 14, 15 years ago, I got a call from you and you told me that you had breast cancer, right? And I think the first question that I have for you, given that, I think cancer always translates into a real emotional and also physical crisis. It also, puts us face to face with mortality, and which is one of our greatest fears, just being a human. How did you feel when you found out about all that? What was going on with you?
Yeah. Well, it was devastating to
Hmm.
say the least. And, there are really not a lot of words to describe, except you feel like you get hit by a truck when that happens. And you feel like you got the wind knocked out of you. I remember I hit the ground, actually.
Hmm.
Really felt like a truck or someone had punched me. And my kids were 2 and 5 at the time. So it was a shocker of all shockers.
Right,
And anyone who's been through anything like that would probably tell you something similar.
right. Well, I can't imagine what it would feel like, and that's why I was asking. But I think healthy people a lot of the time, because cancer is so prevalent. You hear about it all the time. If family or friends or a lot of people eventually just get it. What did you do right after that? Did you start exploring avenues of therapy, or did you take a step back and it was just an emotional crisis for a while, figuring out how to bargain with that new information?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, at that time, I was 37, small kids, living actually in Pittsburgh without the moorings of family we had left for my husband's internship. And I really think I was like most people. You go into a crisis mode and you think, okay, how am I going to climb out of this? And I, I had had a lifetime of chronic, non-acute, subacute, they call it, ailments. I always could live my life, perform well, and work, and for the most part. But I had a lot of these things, so I'd had a long history of using integrative care, complementary medicine, alternative care, and that always factored into who I would choose to be my team. And, of course, I had a lot of people in New York, family who were, reaching for the top of the medical profession. So I accumulated a lot of information about who and where to turn and what treatments were available. But at that time, it was stage one,
Hmm.
and so it wasn't that complicated. And yet, they were recommending um, chemotherapy, double mastectomies, because it actually seemed to be in both sides, a tiny bit in the other side. And I would like to say that I found it. I was only 37, and I'm very self-aware because I had a lifetime of undiagnosable to a large extent and untreated to a large extent chronic things. So I was always on top of these
Hmm.
kinds of situations. So, but it seemed like I could go a very hard route and do double mastectomies and then avail myself of integrative help, or I could
Even it's
do
even
some
even
combination.
even at stage one, they wanted you to do a double mastectomy.
Yeah, because they said I was young and we should
Oh,
be a little
right,
more
right,
aggressive.
right.
It was in the other side too, a little bit, and
And you had that
so
gene.
yes,
You had that.
I did not have that gene. Many
Mm,
people don't have that gene. It's
wow.
really, as I've come to learn now, it's really got DNA is not your destiny. Epigenetics is real. It's a science. It has nothing to do with your genes because good genes can be turned on and bad ones off.
So you're
But
saying
at the time, yeah.
when you're saying
But at the time,
yeah, but when you say epigenetics, you're saying there's an external environmental factor and potentially turning on some of these negative, self-inflicting, inflaming, inflaming genes that turn into cancer is what you're saying. What you're saying.
yeah, I'm saying the science says that it's the environment that signals the gene to turn on or off. And yeah, we're all born with a deck, but what
Mm-hmm.
genes get turned on depends on what's your stress level inside your body and stress level coming from outside, which of course affects your body inside.
Yeah.
So that's what epigenetics is now turning science on its head. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter. If you have a gene for heart disease, you can turn it off.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, getting back to what I did, I did the double mastectomies, and I did do some chemo, and I would add today, and I was on the fence about the chemo because I found some really great integrative resources even in 2005 and 6, and they were saying that hormonal positive breast cancer is really not that successfully treated with chemotherapy. We need to look at suppressing your hormones since the hormone seems to be feeding the cancer. And,
Right.
and
So you
that
took.
science, that science is very, very, that's the standard of care today, by the way. They don't even give you chemotherapy with hormone positive breast cancer if you only have it in your breast today.
What's the alternative to hormone positive breast cancer? What is the other type of breast cancer that people have?
Well, like hormone negative, triple negative, which tends to be more aggressive.
So yours was considered less aggressive, but it was
Yes,
hormonal.
it was. Yes, they said it was. If you're going to get one, get that one because it's slow growing and it behaves well
Right.
and all this stuff.
So you were taking some sort of hormone suppressor after you did the chemo, or you didn't do the chemo, or was it a combination of both?
I did do the chemo because the evidence was just coming out that it was not indicated, and I was frightened. So I said I would do it, and I did it. And then I tried to do the hormone suppressing drugs, but I was so young still that it was like a ton of bricks being dropped on me because it flips you from premenopausal to menopausal really fast. And that's like hypermenopause. And I was like, oh my God, I have little kids. I might kill somebody. Oh my God.
Right. And you have cancer and you're menopausal at the same time. It's an explosive combination, right?
Yeah, it's really hard. It was really hard. So I actually said no to that. I stopped doing that.
You stopped to the hormone suppression?
Yeah, I stopped the hormones.
All right, but what was the status of you physically when you stopped the hormone suppression? Like, was it in remission? Was it under control?
Yes,
you were in remission.
It was in remission. But I went against the advice. Yeah.
Okay, so the hormone suppression, you would just consistently take that after you went into remission. It was a protection there. It was an aid. It was a Band-Aid, right? Of some sort. A precaution, right. And while you were doing this, you also had a number of alternative type providers helping you with different courses of action, right? You weren't just doing the traditional chemo, etc., medicine.
Right.
And did you think that those people and their recommendations helped you?
I do. I think that I got a lot of help from a lot of different places. I mean, you name it, I tried it because I did say no to the hormone therapy. I felt like I better do a lot, right? I better do as much as I can. I did diet and naturopathy and homeopathy and I mean, colon health. And I did so many things, Jeff.
Right.
Like I was,
Were you doing that? But were you doing that while you were in remission, or did you do it? You started doing that when things started turning awry again? Because you went for a long time. You were okay, right?
Yeah. So I had 9 years between the initial diagnosis and the progression, and I was even before I got the initial diagnosis, I was getting on a holistic path because I'd had these other things that I alluded to. I had a lot of chronic headaches and chronic fatigues type stuff, and I had depression and I had anxiety too, and that's a really big part of my story. So
Right.
um,
Right.
we can
Are you
talk
gonna?
about that more. But so I was already on the path, and then this happened,
Mm-hmm.
and the diagnosis, and I stayed on the path, and I dug deeper into the path, and I tried what I've now learned to change matter with matter. You know, if I just do this diet, if I just clean my colon one more time, if I take this natural remedy, if I do Reiki, if I do acupuncture, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and some of it helped, but not enough. And 9 years later, it showed up in my lymph gland, and that
Mm-hmm.
was 9 years later. And
Right.
then I got even more serious about what is out there to help me. I I I immediately had a hysterectomy to cut
Mm-hmm.
the fuel, right? Because your ovaries generate estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So I at this point now I've lost two body parts, two breasts, and two more. Well, three if you count the cervix. So now I've been cut up multiple times, and I had 2.5 reconstructions of my fake boobs. So
Mm-hmm.
I've had many, many, many insults and injuries to my body. So
Right.
I highlight that because that's significant. I kept thinking, well, you know, how can I get rid of this, and how can I apply my best thinking and others' best thinking? But I still succumb to a lot of cut it out, cut it off, cut it out, cut it off, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, take this substance, that substance. Then I became a raw vegan when
Mm-hmm.
it came back.
How many years ago did it come back?
Hardcore.
How many years ago?
So that was in 2014 it came back. So
Yeah.
October 2014 it came back.
Well,
So
I want to say a couple of things. First, I want to say, amazing that you've been able to fight so hard and endure for this. I don't think you just do it for yourself. I think you do it for your family. And you do it for your children. I can't speak for exactly, but I'm trying to simulate the emotions that I would have to try and conjure up if I was in your position. And I think it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk to you, because you talked about depression and anxiety, and a lot of people deal with that, and we all deal with it at one point or another. I mean, I have a business of my own I've told you about, and stress, anxiety, so you wonder sometimes, what are you turning on and what are you turning off? But what I wanted to say is that I'm so, I don't know if impressed is the right word, or admiration of your ability to fight. I don't know if I would have the ability to fight like that, given how tough life, I mean, life's great, but life can be, it throws curveballs and it can be really tough too. I'm saying that you've been able to really fight. And so I don't know how much it means to you, but I commend you for that. And I admire that. And, you've definitely been down quite a road. It's been quite a journey. And then it's led to this, your understanding of the external factors, a little bit of the spiritual that you're going to talk about, and then eventually talk about how you're, that road and that trip and down to Mexico for another treatment that you eventually got involved with at the end. So
yeah,
you can keep on going if you want to talk about your, I think you were talking about you were going to get to the spiritual side. I interrupted you, but I felt I wanted to say that to you first.
I really appreciate that, Jeff.
Yeah.
It's very, very moving, and to have these things reflected back to you, right? Like, so this is a conversation that I wish, we didn't have to have, but what a blessing that I'm here to talk about it and have an old friend like you reflect that to me. So thank you.
Yeah, and I want, go ahead. I want people to, look, there's been other people that have talked about their experiences, but your road is a little bit different, and I think you're gonna say some things tonight that not necessarily the general public might know or might understand or might not be able to investigate, given they may not have the same resources or the same emotional aptitude or interest that you have to look down different avenues as you try and help yourself get healthy. So you want to talk about some of the when things started getting bad, and then some of the changes that you felt you had to make, and what you did to try and correct the situation.
Yeah, sure. So just backing up for 1 second, in 2014, I became a raw vegan because it had progressed and it went to stage 3. And I went to this place for 3 weeks in Florida, and I thought that was the answer, right? You know, let me like clean out my body and give my immune system a big boost that way. And it was wonderful. And I mean, I'm talking about die hard wheatgrass twice a day, sprout juice twice a day. I was growing sprouts and spending a fortune buying them when I couldn't grow them, and only eating uncooked plants, living foods, raw vegan. And I even eventually started a little business out of my house selling that food because I was like really into it. But all the while I knew that my emotional state of being was not still where it needed to be. I had depression and anxiety. I had anger, which is sort of one of the sides of the coin of depression. And I had, you know, in my marriage, I had clear indication that my bad moods were not welcome. And I come from a family where, you know, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of anger right beneath the surface. And I didn't know how, right? I didn't know. I knew it wasn't good for me, but I didn't have the how, the tools to really change my state of being, to get on top of that. And that is at the heart of the spiritual transformation that I ultimately underwent starting last January, when unfortunately 4.5 years of raw veganism and then going to soak in oxygen water, this cocoon oxygen water in Las Vegas.
I remember that. I remember
6 weeks I lived in Vegas.
I was, oh, you know what I also want to say is that you were, not only were you going for all these, I wouldn't say different treatments, but trying different things. You were posting all this on Facebook, so you were sharing this with the world, and you weren't afraid to let everybody in and what was going on. So you had this quiet audience that was, you know, watching from afar or digitally from afar, and, you know, rooting for you. I mean, I was definitely rooting for you, but I was like, holy shit, man! When I saw you inside that picture inside that chamber, I said to myself, things must be getting bad if you're in this fucking chamber in all places, Las Vegas. Like, you can go out and gamble afterwards and party all night after that. All, and you're in that town. And did that help at all? Or do you think, or you don't know?
No, it didn't help at all. And here's why. I didn't believe in it. Here's what I now know.
Right.
I didn't believe in it. Energetically, it was all wrong for me. And I say that not like, because from what I know now, what you believe and what you get excited, happy, grateful, and joyful about, whether it's your conventional doctor or it's drinking raw cow's milk every day. I mean, I've talked to some people who have cured themselves miraculously or read about them, and everyone shared some common traits. And one of them was they had a spiritual transformation and they were able to connect to their higher self. And a part of that is having their whole body flooded with belief and joy and gratitude and light. That changes you on a molecular, cellular, and biological level. The science is there. It's actually been there for a long time. The placebo effect is a great example of that. They give you a pill and they say, it's going to make you feel better, Mr. Hyman. And
I could use one of those pills.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the trick. If you only believe it, if you only have the intention, but not the elevated emotion, and this is what this guy I follow a lot now, Dr. Joe Dispenza, says, it won't work, because belief without elevated emotion doesn't change your chemistry.
What's the elevated emotion? How do you do that?
Gratitude, joy, love, feeling as if you already have what you want, mentally rehearsing the elation that you're going to feel when it is real, calls it to you on an energetic level.
You mean not sitting there, not sitting every day saying, fuck, if I only had this, I'd be happy, but finding a way to be happy with exactly what you have. Well, I'm guilty of that, so I am in jeopardy. I'm glad that I'm talking tonight, because I'm totally in jeopardy right now. Because I'm always, I mean, I'm grateful sometimes, but definitely I'm like, you know what, if I can just get that next person on my show, or I can do this or make that, so that can definitely get you down a rabbit hole for sure, and it can make you depressed, and it can create anxiety. On top of the fact that you had cancer, which can create depression and anxiety, you had to deal with just the ways of the world at the same time. So I know you did program with a Dr. Joe. You followed the program for a while. What started kicking in for you? What started making you feel emotionally better? How did that happen?
Well, let's back up to the Mexico thing because it came roaring back after all this soaking in oxygen and going in the oxygen tank, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that was a tough time. That was December and January of last year. I found out it went to my liver and my brain despite all that. And that was the wake-up call. That was the darkness before the dawn, right? And I mean that. That was like the opportunity for my soul screaming at me going, you're on the wrong path. It's not about the water. It's not about trying so hard. It's about your state of being, you know, and when you're depressed, your cells are depressed. That's psychoneuroimmunology. There's all these fields of science that have been around a while that are just getting stronger and more to the mainstream that prove this out.
Have you ever seen that that Japanese? I don't know his name, and we don't have anybody on a computer next to me to pull up things like on some of the other fancier shows. But there's the water and the snowflakes, and when they play like the positive music, the effects on the molecular level of the water. So it's that type of thing we're talking about, right?
That's right. We are made up of more energy than matter, more wave than particle. Just like the water, we respond to frequency, and our cells literally reorganize themselves according to what command central is pumping out. That's so getting a little ahead of myself, but that's what all these people who achieve the miraculous, the spontaneous healing, they all have this in common. They find a connection to the field, the electromagnetic field, and you can call it God or Jesus or source or the creator, but we are all this. Every one of us, we are more energy than matter, more wave than particle. And quantum physics is real too. And it says that, you know, the electron appears wherever you think it is. And that there is no time space, that we're not just in cause and effect science. That's Newtonian physics. We're in, you can put yourself anywhere at any time. It's all happening stacked, not linear. And
so a particle is not viewable until observed, that sort of thing, right? You're talking about?
Or it exists wherever you think it is. And you can put yourself in any timeline. And but this is all the stuff that I found afterwards. You know, when it came back, I went back to my drawing book and that drawing board, and I found this amazing American in Mexico City, who I believe is a healer too, because he was an innovator and he was relentless in his pursuit of, let's try to help people outside the system. And he gave me immunotherapy by injection. So that's intratumoral immunotherapy right into my liver tumors and my axillary tumors, which was lymph glands in your
But he freezes those, right, first? No, he doesn't freeze?
Cryoablation, and he does that for some people. He didn't freeze me. It was not indicated in my case. He just shot me up with these really cutting-edge immunotherapy drugs, most of which are not the immunotherapy drugs that are, most commonly used here in the States. You know, immunotherapy has been here for quite some time, and it's gaining more and more.
It's big in California.
Yeah, well, it's in the mainstream playbook now, but it was originally developed for metastatic melanoma. And like so much of what goes on in our healthcare system, it's not available unless you fit a certain criteria. You have this exact kind of cancer and you're this stage. Like, it wouldn't even have been available for what I had.
Right. What? I'm sorry.
So even the way they do it here intravenously, yeah.
But how are his drugs different? Are they not FDA approved in the States?
That's right.
Right.
So they were experimental. He had one that he used on me that I could share the name, but it won't matter. But you know, there was a mice study, and like 97% of the mice cleared up. Now, not every body is in a position of having billions of dollars to do randomized, double-blind, you know, the gold standard that the pharmaceutical industry, those kinds of testing, you know, trials and testing. So a lot of these guys are out there going, you know, I don't have billions to get this, you know, tested that way, but I have a strong belief it will work. And there are people like me who were in a bad spot, and there was really not much for me. in conventional care. So I did a lot of research, and I decided this was for me. And what this man said to me was so important, because where I was hearing a lot of game over, basically, he said, I'm optimistic. And I cannot tell you, again, energy. The energy of that statement was like, thank you, God.
Right.
That resonating in my body cellularly. This is where language matters, words matter. Right? I mean, it changed. It gave me the mustard seed of hope. Right?
It gave you a lot of. It gave you hope, and you had some gratitude, and you felt that warmth all over you, and you had it, and there was a shot.
And I felt the possibility that I can climb out of this. I can do this. I can do this. Anyone can do it. I can do it. So I did go there, and that started, that's what I call my supercharged jumper cables. I needed a bridge. I didn't go right to the spiritual transformation stuff. And I didn't plan not to. It just didn't evolve that way. I needed a bridge. I needed a matter to matter, a chemical substance.
So him telling you that you had hope and you were eventually going to make your trek down to Mexico, that came first, and then you started practicing the spiritual side a little bit more before you went. Is that correct?
Well, I'm already meditating, but not to the degree that I am now, and not with the same exact technique. But no, I really went right away to Mexico. Like a week later, I was in Mexico. There was no time to lose.
Right.
And then I already was hooked up with a colleague of his who would become like my medical oncologist, and he gave me a reduced dosage, off-label, totally not approved. He works out of Florida, but these guys team up, and he gave me this drug cocktail to take to assist the immunotherapy with working. And I also took all these highly specialized supplements, natural stuff that my doctor his name is Dr. Jason Williams, the WilliamsCancerInstitute.com. He gave me all these supplements to take also. All this was designed to give my cells an extra boost while the immunotherapy was turning up.
Right. But you're also convinced that if you weren't positive, if you weren't hopeful, if you didn't feel blessed in some way before you went down for this treatment, that it may not have took. Is that correct?
I agree. That's correct. Again, it's all about your attitude and your belief and your state of being. Affirmations don't work on their own. You got to have a state of being.
You're really scaring me, because I got to get my attitude in check here. I'm telling you, I'm in trouble. I'm fucked.
Well, hang around, man. I'll get you.
Because you seem happy. That's great. That's awesome.
For the most part, I am more happy because I have a lot of depression and anxiety.
Look, we're Jewish. We're from Long Island. We already had a rough start. Right there. It's hard. Right here.
Right there.
Right, we're fucked. I was going to talk
about that. I was going to talk about that because I didn't have any connection to spirituality because of that. I really didn't. Right. It was all talk about being immersed and focused on the material.
You should talk. I know you should talk to. You saw the podcast of me and Michael Schlossman. He was on the show. You should hook up with him. You should talk to him because you want to talk about his transformation. Is different cause and effect, but similar to what you went to find the place and the right spot for you that you needed to be at for some things to happen. And I'm really glad that I got you to come on tonight because I wasn't sure which way it was going to go, but it's great to hear, what you're saying. I totally believe it. And I think that, people should hear this story. And I mean, you go back a number of years, maybe you go 5-10 years, and you said something about affecting your body on the cellular from an emotional standpoint. People would laugh, but today, I mean, I get it. Like when you have depression, you have anxiety, you're like that built up, that adrenaline's going, and then you find a moment of gratitude. You find that spiritual moment where that gratitude just brings lightness, and all that angst and depression goes away, and that's the kind of state that you want to get your body into in a relaxed state. And I am by no means no expert. I'm speaking in layman's terms right here, but I get what you're saying. Get your body out of that and your mind out of that stress place into more of that welcoming, non-fearful place, and then go attack what you need to do. Do you have a blog or any information about your journey, or if like anybody wanted to gather some of your thoughts or information? Do you have any of that?
Well, I mean, I have social media presence,
Mm-hmm.
and I've thought about having a web page
Mm-hmm.
or maybe a blog. I thought about writing a book eventually. I mean, if you go on my social media pages, if you go to Facebook or Instagram, on Instagram it's Thrive Babe One, and on Facebook it's Danielle Rigg. I publicly share my journey very much
Right.
on
So
purpose. I want to help people
Thrive Babe
thrive
One
on
on,
Instagram.
on Instagram, and Danielle Burke Rigg on
Yeah.
Facebook. Because I mean, I'm sure there are other people out there like you, but there is just a tragedy of stories that don't compare that ever make it to this point. I mean, you've went from stage 4 brain, lung, liver, correct? Am I saying it right?
Brain, liver, and it was still in my lymph gland too.
And now
I didn't have
you're clear?
clear.
Wow. Well, I can attest to knowing you for all those years, and I know you didn't make up that story. I know that you really had all this. I don't want this to be like we're selling some sort of, elixir on this program, because we're not. I mean, but we went from a stage 4 cancer condition to a clear, happy person in a music studio right now. That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Speaking over the airways to me right now, which is great, modern technology, because I was definitely not making it down to Georgia, and you weren't making it up here. But it's a wonderful story. Is there? And you were saying that from a spiritual side, that Dr. Joe. Well, can you just say a little bit more about him? I know I've seen him on podcasts before. I don't know a ton about him, but you want to share a little bit about him?
I could share just, my experiences that, I found as soon as I got home from Mexico that I really, really, I was on my knees and I was speaking to God, like and this is how this happens, right? It takes a crisis usually for your soul to wake you up out of the dream of living as if there's only this reality and there's nothing else going on. And I started tuning into other sources online.
That's
and
cool.
I felt the presence. I felt connected to something greater than myself for the first, maybe not the first time. I felt it bigger than I've ever felt it before. And like we were saying, I didn't have a strong spiritual connection the way I grew up. So, I had a lot of 12-step recovery in my lifetime because I was surrounded by a lot of alcoholics who were getting sober in various states of recovery. Mm-hmm. So I had a sense of spirituality, but this really kicked my ass, right? So I did these things. And then one of my spiritual friends said, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And it was like the third time I'd heard his name. And I was like, okay. And I went online and I bought this online progressive workshop, which is basically a recording of a live 3-day thing that he often does. Yeah. And you buy it. You watch it like as if you were in the conference, it's an auditorium with everybody else.
Right. He's got a lot of followers on YouTube. I mean, I've seen this guy around a lot. I mean, he's got a lot of people. He does. He's like the spiritual, this is probably a really bad analogy. He's like the spiritual Tony Robbins, maybe. He's got Tony Robbins in a sense.
I know. In a sense, but I'll tell you what his gift is. So he also healed from the miraculous. He broke 6 vertebrae 30 years ago, and they said, you will never walk again. But he was already a chiropractor. He had some holistic, and he had a spiritual side. He said, yes, I will, because I'm familiar with the teachings of Jesus and all these other people throughout time. And he wasn't religious, who said the mind can heal you. And he healed. In like 9 weeks, he was back to seeing patients. And he vowed at that point that he would become, like I did, a student of spontaneous remission and look for the commonalities among people who have done the miraculous. And he packages it up with science and in a mainstream way. And that is his gift. He's got a tremendous, and he's a guy too. So when he talks about heart energy and all this stuff, he's relatable to men, a place a lot of guys are afraid to go. He's got a great way with guys, but mostly he packages it mainstream and science. It's not religion. Spirituality and religion are two totally different things. And I give him a lot of credit for what I accomplished in a short period of time, even though, like I said, he wasn't my only source. But man, when I finished that workshop and I did like the 5 signature meditations in there, I felt my body shaking. I felt every cell in my body coming alive, because they're not even meditations. Those are active transformational exercises
I
designed
got
to
to
get
do
you to
this.
change.
All right, where do I sign up? I'm signing up tonight. I'm doing it.
Do it.
I'm doing it.
Do it.
Well, I'll tell you this. You have millions and millions of cells in your body that are all talking to each other and doing their own thing to make your body function. There's got to be a way for you to personally speak to them as well. And I'm sure that I can believe and I can see that can have a very positive effect on your body without me knowing what the fuck I'm talking about or claiming to be an expert on it. But I will say that I agree with you. I think I'm going to definitely try that course. And you think it was a major preparation for you, a major foundation for you in going down to Mexico to do that treatment?
Well, I went to Mexico first, and then I was initiated. I did this after. I didn't find this until April. I was doing other spiritual things. I listened to Abraham Hicks. As I mentioned, there were other sources.
So, but it was a combination of the two that you think helped
totally
meld that treatment to you.
Yeah, I would say that both the Williams and this other Dr. Rosenberg from Florida, who I don't want to discredit, he held my hand more on a week-to-week basis. He gave me the drugs to take orally, but they were in awe. I think a little bit in awe, because in a very short period of time, I pulled out of it, and they were like, "You're doing amazing." And I want to add, one of the things that they often do for people who are as far gone as me is they give you IV chemo, low dose, so it's not conventional care chemo. I was getting ready to move to Florida in February to be near this guy Rosenberg's clinic, and leave my kids for 3 months to do IV chemo, and I didn't need it.
Right.
I didn't need it. My number started dropping right away, and he was like, "Okay, hold up. You don't need to come this week. Let's just keep going." So the miracles of what I achieved in a short period of time, essentially I did something experimental.
Right.
It's not FDA approved. It's not standard of care.
Right.
One time I did these injections, and then I came home and I started taking low dose and off label things, and I healed, and I healed as fast as I did, no doubt, because I changed my emotional state of being, which signaled new genes, and it's I'm a new me. I mean,
That's great.
I'm more. Here's what I'll say: it's not about being someone different. It's about becoming more of who you really are.
Right.
And you know me for a long time, and I had a lot of tension, and I still do at times. Don't get me wrong; I am not perfect at this. It's all a journey.
But you have a path out of it.
Yeah, I have better tools now.
Right.
Better tools. A lot of type A stuff, a lot of judgment, a lot of anger, things I've mentioned already, and I have the best tools that I have ever had now, and I'm still working on it. But
well, you're still young, and you have a long life ahead of you, and now you have these tools, and now you're healthy, and so you can go and enjoy your life and watch your family continue to grow, and that's awesome. But I do agree. I mean, I agree, and I can feel what you're saying, and it's definitely something that, you know, if anybody wants to be in touch of it, is slightly in touch of it, should really explore, because a lot of people in these days are going through very, very stressful and anxiety-ridden times, which can lead to illnesses and sicknesses and just depression. And I get it. Living in an urban environment, you live in Georgia, we live up here in New York. I mean, it's crazy up here. It's nuts.
That's one of the reasons I left. My soul knew to leave a long time ago.
I know. Good for you. Good for you. You can buy a house for a reasonable $1 down there and get healthy.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now to monitor yourself, and like what's the regimen now? Are you on medication? Are you off medication? Or now that you've, you know, in this remission from this therapy in Mexico, what are you doing now?
I'm glad you asked that, because it's my latest conundrum, like quandary. So I still take the low dose off label concoction.
I have an itch in my ear. Sorry.
It's okay, and I don't want to take it, but this Dr. Rosenberg feels that for a little while more I should, because he's looking at something else in my system that's not sick, but he wants that number lower. And I I still take this stuff. Yes, the
What
answer is
is
yes. I do standard of care imaging. I do PET scans and brain scans and CT scans. In fact, I've done a lot of radiation in the last year, and
mm-hmm,
I'm taking a little bit of a pause on that
mm-hmm.
because it's a lot of radiation.
Right. What does Jason Williams say about like take aftercare? What is his opinion?
You
Does he
just
have
keep
one?
taking, yes, you keep taking. So they keep running my numbers blood test wise, and
Mm-hmm.
my cancer numbers are well within normal, thank you God. And they keep, looking at other blood levels and then taking pictures, which is PET images,
How often do you
PET
do
scan.
that?
So I like the brain every 6 months now because
Mm-hmm.
I've had clear brains, and the PET scan maybe 3 to 6 months. They pushed the PET off because my numbers were still so low
Mm-hmm.
a couple months in January. So I do those things for anyone who watches this at any point eventually. I have those things done. I am not completely off the grid. I allow them to look and can
Mm-hmm.
confirm.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's amazing. I just want to let you know that, I mean, other than the story being incredible, heartwarming, enduring, one of the things I took away is that I'm gonna take that class. I'm gonna take that spiritual class that you recommend, and you've definitely motivated. So that's a good thing from your experience. You're motivating people to do different things. How's your family doing through all this? Your husband and your children, how are they feeling now based off your this recent success and breakthrough?
Well, yeah, my family is doing much better, obviously. And I want to just take a moment to acknowledge my incredible husband, who has really been the one who led me to so much of my spiritual growth. And very early on, when I met him, he was already on a holistic path physically. He was acquainted with a lot of complementary holistic modalities. As I've mentioned, had a lot of chronic lifetime ailments, and I was so grateful to be shown the way toward alternative treatments through him, really, initially. And then he led me to spiritual paths. He got me trained in transcendental meditation because, in his work as a brain injury specialist, he is a traumatic brain injury and PTSD chief at the military base here in Augusta, Georgia. And he has his staff trained, and then they teach the soldiers meditation and yoga and all of these incredible techniques to calm their brains down. He really was Dr. Joe before I found Dr. Joe. There's a lot that those two have in common in terms of understanding how the brain works, the deep grooves and pathways that are formed from the experiences that we have, and how to rewire that. Dr. Jack was my Dr. Joe for a long time, and he taught me about the Tao, and so he is a huge part of my support system, and he's been there obviously for the trips I've made and for the struggles I've had, and I'm very blessed. There's a reason our souls came together, and this is definitely one of them. And I think he's feeling free now too, and much safer, as we all are. My children are much happier people today. My son, who I think took this very hard in his own way internally, he's a lot like me. He physically felt unwell for a lot of this. This year is feeling much better, and he told me the other night that he doesn't worry about me anymore, which is an incredible gift. He said, "Mom, you're so far down this path with Dr. Joe," and he knows Dr. Joe. I've certainly shared things with them. I've shared meditations with them and live streams, and they know about his Instagram feed, and they've listened to part of the progressive workshop. But he said, "You're so far down this path, Mom, I know you're never going back." And that gives him tremendous confidence and the ability to breathe easy. And I think my daughter also internalized things in a very different way. But she and I are very close today, and that was not the case before. So I am so blessed and so grateful to have the family that I have, and the support from beyond. My parents have been champions, just absolute champions. And my wider family circle have been unbelievably supportive and have jumped on board, some of them, with Dr. Joe and other things that I'm doing. And I mean, it's just been an incredible journey for everybody. And now we can support each other, right? Like my friends, some of them are doing Dr. Joe. I have an incredible support system, and there is no substitute for that. And so I have to give kudos and shouts out for that, because without that, it would have been much harder, much harder. So yeah, everyone's doing much better, and that's a really tremendous gift.
Well, maybe these some of the amazing things that come out of the bad, you know. So as horrible as an expression as it was that you had to endure, some good loving and caring and, you know, bonding things came out of it. And I think that your experience, I mean, I'm hoping people will see this. I know it's helping me. And I think that your experience will help others. And maybe they'll go to your Thrive Babe 1 at Instagram or your Facebook page, Danielle Rigg, and see your story. And if you have some time, if anybody asks any questions, maybe you can answer. But extremely inspirational. It was very, very, just let me back up for a second and say it was really, you know, when I first heard about it, it was really scary when you hear people that you know, we've been friends for a long time. We've known each other since high school. Obviously, we didn't talk all the time. Once in a blue moon throughout the years, we'd connect and say hello for a few minutes. But when you hear someone that you have, you know, a past with, a friendship, whatever it may be, it's scary when you hear someone get sick like that. It you know, it hits home, and you know, it definitely ignites a lot of your own personal fears when something like that happens to someone that you know. So for you to come back out of it, I can be selfish now and say, everything's going to be all right. If she's going to be all right, I'll be good. You know, she's not really that sick. You know, and that happens with anybody.
Sure, because I'd like to say one thing about that. You know, when the fright kicks in, it's really a change in consciousness to say, let me look at the opportunity that this is presenting, and to say, that's what it is. It's a wake-up call. And I've said this before, you know, this was never about fighting cancer once I got into the spiritual part. This was always about loving Danielle and the ways that I didn't love her enough. And I was too hard on her. As hard as I was on the rest of the world, I was harder on myself.
Right,
and
right.
That's the one frame that needs to change. It's not about fight the cancer, fight the cancer. Your whole energy and frequency, if you're all about the fight still, is all wrong for healing. You know, one of the great messages in this is that when you're living in survival mode and you're firing cortisol and adrenaline, there's no room, there's no energy for growth, healing, and repair, which is exactly what your body needs. It needs love and care and self-acceptance and self-respect and soothing. And you cannot win against cancer with a fight. That's the same shit that got you fucked up to begin with. Right. And well, yeah, I mean, listen, I just want to just add in, if anybody's, you know, going to be listening to this or is listening to this, that I get it. You gotta set yourself up emotionally, spiritually, physically for success. If you're going to be in angst, anger, and pain, you're saying that certain parts of your cell structure just may not be receptive to care. Is that right? Yeah. I'm saying the certain parts of your cell structure are going to stay locked in lack instead of have the ability to have more light fill them and for them to work of growth, healing, and repair. Right. When you're sick, you need growth, healing, and repair. And you don't have any energy for growth, healing, and repair when you're constantly rigid and tense and in survival mode because, and like you said earlier, now you're in survival mode because someone told you have cancer. So now you're gripped with fear. Right. Yeah, that's how I feel the first hour of every one of my days. When I wake up in the morning, that's my first hour. And then then my son makes a couple of jokes and I'm like, all right, I'm good. I relax. I get into a little bit of gratitude, but I totally get it. And I think a lot of people that are going to watch this are going to get it. And they're going to be totally inspired by what you have gone through and transformation that's occurred and what you've learned, and that you've come out on the other side into a pretty incredible place.
It's amazing. It's a good story. It's a good story.
Well,
it's a real story, but it's a good story.
It's a real story.
It's a real story.
And the story ended with healing, but the journey continues. I just have to be very honest. It's a spiritual journey. For all of us, it goes on, and there's more work to be done. There's more rough edges to smooth out, and there's more the critic in my head. There's more to be done to shut it off.
Right.
That Dr. When you get into Dr. Joe, you'll see we've been conditioned, and we have a program running, and we
I know. I know that guy every day.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, that's the guy. I got a guy
him.
too.
I know him.
Yeah.
He looks like me, but he's inside, and he's a pain in the ass. I get it. How are you feeling? You feeling good now?
Yeah.
You enjoy yourself tonight?
Well, tonight, right this minute.
Yeah, you
ask me how I feel. I feel good right now.
Yeah, I'm asking how you feeling right now. You want to stop? You want to keep on talking? How do you feel?
You're the host, so you
well, it's up to, I mean, you're the guest. The guest usually gets what food they want, what drink, and make a decision whether they want to keep on going. I mean, I think we learned a lot. So I just want to thank you for joining me tonight. It was great, and I learned a lot and learned some things I knew, some things I didn't know. I think most moving is your story, and I think that transformation from moving from one state to the other, and that state of gratitude, and how it's making you feel so great, and how that's affected and changed your relationship with your children. And I think that's really special, and I think people need to hear that. It's great. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Jeff. It was really great to be on.
All right. I'll talk to you. What?
I hope some people see it.
They will. Eventually. Don't worry about it. This is going to be the breakout right here. This is going to be the good one. Okay. Listen, I'll call you soon, okay? Have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
bye-bye.